These aren't the stories your mother told you. No, these are the other stories.
Today's episode of The Other Stories is Totality, written by Dexter McLeod and narrated by Georgia Cook.
I wait behind my house for the night people. Here the backyard dips sharply into the creek as it cuts a jagged crisscross into the forest. The trees just beyond rustle in the wind of the coming storm front, singing along with the gurgle of the brook. The night people will come from beneath us, crawling out from the large concrete drainage pipes that jut out of the ground, funneling the county's storm runoff into the creek. It's a maze of tunnels and pipes and corridors down there, a labyrinthine honeycomb cut into the earth. While I'm waiting for them, my fingers worry at a loose thread sticking out from the embroidered name on my luggage. It reads Lana Chand in ornate cursive. The suitcase is packed to the brim with everything a 16-year-old girl needs to run towards home. Or that's how I like to think about it. Soon there will be nothing left here for me to run away from. I glance back at my house. It's lit only by candles. The electricity died days ago. A shadow crosses the blinds as one of my parents paces the floor. I can see my breath despite the date. It is the third week of summer, and yet here in July I need a jacket to stave off a shiver. When I look up to the daytime sky, I marvel at its darkness. After days of slow convergence, the full eclipse has arrived. As the scientists predicted, the sun is now gone forever, hidden behind a rogue planet. It has been waiting for us, out there in the darkness between the stars, coming to meet us from billions of miles away. Everything is always just waiting. Waiting. Like the night people. They waited for me then, for me to grow up, and I wait for them now. This stretch of grass by the creek is where I first saw them when I was 6. They scared me then, before I understood what they were. Their pale faces had hovered in the darkened woods beyond the creek like grey flames among the trees. Their gaunt profiles were barely visible, like the negative after-image a firefly leaves on your eyes between flashes. There, but only in memory. A patch of space that had been brighter but was now dark pores between bioluminescent breaths. That night they watched me play in the moonlight while I had a midnight tea party with my dolls and stuffed animals. My mother had fallen asleep in the lawn chair as I played, her wakefulness a regular casualty of raising a child like me, one chained to nighttime when the risk of sunlight was too great. I'd yelped in fear as the night people peered at me just beyond the tree line. They vanished when my mother woke, and her insistence that I'd dreamed them convinced me that my imagination had the better of me. I'd always been a precocious child, left with few friends and the towers of books I devoured from the safety of the indoor gloom. Since I've been waiting here, the temperature has dropped another 5 degrees. If the woman on the news was right, back before the television went dead, then the creek will be frozen in a few hours. In the weeks that follow, the atmosphere itself will begin to freeze, snowing down a blanket of frozen gases hundreds of feet deep. But I should be home by then. To my new home. I still catch myself hesitating to be seen in the gathered half-light that is oddly both dark and golden. It's rare for me to have a daytime outing. The danger has always been too great. I pull back my UV veil and roll up my sleeves. I feel naked without the layers of fabric and sunscreen. My bare skin hasn't seen direct sunlight since I got blistering sunburns as an infant. Not that I remember it. It's a day that my parents, Alum and Diana, never forgot. Xeroderma pigmentosum, the doctors had called it. And there had been so many doctors. A fluke of genes had conspired against me. The fortune teller's deck of cards had shuffled me an abbreviated life, sentenced to die 30 years ahead of schedule while hiding in the dark. I cannot bear ultraviolet light. My skin is a kaleidoscope of freckles, like an atlas of dead stars. The sun's gift to me are blisters and burns, cancer and cataracts. Cataracts, like the dark planet hanging above me, a mote in the eye of the sun. It drifted into our lives months ago, a chance mutation of orbits like the genes that blister me. It has been chasing us around the sun ever since, until now, at this stalemate, a final occultation. Moments ago, as the sky went dark, there had been that beautiful diamond ring effect at the totality of the eclipse, a golden circlet hovering around a globe of midnight. A diamond ring was fitting. It was, after all, a marriage of planets. For better, for worse, until death do they part. Now there's only the faint glow surrounding that world, a somber halo. Do devils have halos? Astronomers gave it some unromantic string of dates and digits, too sterile a name for what will murder the Earth. Before the panic and the riots, when there was still some hope the math had lied, some had called it Planet X. As it crept closer and hope faded, cultists and conspiracy theorists named it Nemesis or Nibiru. Most took to calling it Fenrir, in honour of the wolf in Norse myth that was destined to devour the sun. Had it not been for the night people, it would devour me as well. But I've known Fenrir was coming all along. They whispered it to me. They, my hidden family. They knew it lay there out in the night, floating towards us like black snow. Their books had promised its coming, and deep below the earth they had sung hymns to that globe and what it carried. Their gods are up there, they tell me, and their gods have come home. At this thought I grip my luggage tightly, as I'm going home too. I glance up to see for myself, squinting my eyes as a reflex for a sun that no longer has power over me. In the edges of the ring, movement appears. Things are writhing along the perimeter of the halo, extending outward from the rogue world and up into its alien sky. Things flap and undulate, forming strange inverted shadows here at the lawn like the upside-down reflections of a pinhole camera. Skittering shadows strike upward, cast by snake-like tentacles grasping and reaching towards the earth with greedy movement. The skin of their planet is squirming and thrashing like an ocean of tissue. From this distance, shadows so large must be cast by things the size of continents. Their shuddering breaths, should such things breathe, must be like an earthquake. I wonder if the planet itself is alive, or if it is merely a vessel for things I cannot imagine. Things the night people pray to down in their tunnels and caves, down in their city of night. I hear splashing coming from the concrete pipes. Faint outlines materialize out of the darkness as the night people emerge from the drains. Half a dozen of them spill out of the tunnel and stand in the creek. They always remind me of characters from my Edward Gorey picture books. Tall and angular, with pale grey skin like wood ash. Their eyes are deep set, and they wear old hats and carry threadbare umbrellas. They do not burn in the light, but they like it less than I do. Their antique clothes feel at home in a black and white silent film, or in old-fashioned photos shot in silver copper hues. They are sepia snapshots brought to life. They had visited me many times after that midnight tea party, and at last I realised they were not my imagination. As I grew older, I saw them everywhere. They would peer up through sewer grates and storm drains. I'd catch glimpses of their black eyes through the narrow circles of sidewalk manholes. They hid beneath bridges and in city basements and the spillways of hydroelectric dams. They huddled in the shadows down long abandoned subway lines. They emerged from animal dens, caves and sinkholes. "We have so many names," one once told me. "We are the Row and the Knockers, the Trotfolk, the Carnabot and the Draugr. We are the Night People, and we live beneath the roots of the world." I wave at them, but they do not move. It is not their way. They join me on the creek bank, their muted smiles full of teeth and black tongues. One outstretches a hand, and I take it in mine. His long, spindly fingers are like sticks, but polished and light, like driftwood. His hand engulfs mine 3 times over, but he is gentle, a beast that is all too aware of its strength. Voices rise to the west, and we turn to look. On the hill, candlelight beams from the nearby church. People are singing hymns of their own. I wonder if they've seen the shadows flailing on the planet above, and if they realise it's only a matter of time before the Night People's gods squirm their way down here. Even now, tendrils must be reaching out in the pregnant darkness between our worlds, skittering and grasping until those horrors find a handhold, a stable purchase on some mountaintop where they can grip and strain until they slide down over the earth like a second skin. But the Night People aren't offering a rescue for the chosen, but an ark for the abandoned. All over the world, they're lifting up sewer grates and crawling out of utility basements. They are emerging from drains and tunnels and caves. They are taking in the homeless and the forgotten, the sick and the suffering. Those who have been conditioned by persecution and deprivation, those who can weather the transition to life below, those whose bodies can bear the transformation so that we can be like they are. They've watched us for years, and they're taking us all home. But not everyone can become a night person. Not everyone is a child of the moon. As if they've read my thoughts, 2 of the Night People leave us at the creekside, and they creep up the yard towards my house. I know what's coming, what is needed. My eyes sting and my chest tightens. Despite the cold, I flush with heat and feel the rattle of a sob. When I turn to look at my candlelit house, I see the pair slip unseen into the living room. I had seen the glimmer of their blades glinting in the dark halo of light, but it is only now that I feel as if I am cut as well. The night person holding my hand takes a long bony finger and slides it under my chin. He lifts my gaze upwards to the sky, to the scurrying gods above, and he reminds me of what is worse than all imagining, of what is coming, of what I've asked them to spare my parents from, of the mercy their special night blades will give, sharp and painless and instant. I do not hear my parents' screams, because there are none to hear. There is only sleep. Instead, as I look up and see the writhing ring above me, a coldness touches my forehead, and then another. It begins to snow. It is snowing in July. It is Christmas in July. The last Christmas, and the last July. I wait for the 2 night people to slink back down the hill to join us. Waiting is something I understand. I've been waiting all my short life. I've waited for permission. I've waited behind painted windows for a string of sunsets, for darkened nights and the light of the moon. I've waited for my parents to stop crying, wrongly believing they'd outlive me. I've waited for a cure that never came. I'm very good at waiting. The night person holding my hand begins to walk us towards the creek. I stop, and he looks back at me, curious. I take back my hand and open my luggage to fish out my bottle of sunscreen. I turn it over in my hand, almost afraid of what it means to never need it again. It's been a talisman my entire life. I glance a final time at the inky sky before dropping the bottle to the ground. I take his hand again in mine, and he leads us all towards the storm drain. As we cross into the world beneath the world, into their tunnels that lead to caves, which lead to hidden cities below the bones of the world, I realize that now that the world is ending, my life can finally begin.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Other Stories. Totality was written by Dexter McLeod, narrated by Georgia Cook, produced by Carl Hughes, with music by Dark Fantasy Studio and Tom Robson. The sound effects provided by freesound.org. The episode illustration was provided by Luke Spooner of Carry On House. A quick thanks to our community managers, Jasmine Arch, Joshua Boucher and his eyeless ones, Mary Pastrano and Cody Czarzasty, and to Joshua Boucher for helping with our submission reading. And of course to Ben Overton for the ongoing explosion of content he fires out of his social media cannon. Dexter McLeod resides in Western Kentucky, where he writes in the darkest shades of Southern Gothic, folk and cosmic horror, science fiction and the new weird. His work has been published by Caphonic, Matter Quarterly, Air and Nothingness Press, Dark Moon Books, The Horror Tree, T.Spec and the Hugo Award-winning finalist / European SF Award-winning magazine, Sci-Fi Journal. His stories have also been performed in half a dozen volumes of The Other Stories, this podcast, and in Dissonance Media's Gothic horror podcast, After the Gloaming. Visit linktree/Dexter McLeod to connect with him online. Georgia Cook is an illustrator and writer from London. She's written for publications such as Baffling, Vasterian Lit and Flame Tree Press, as well as the Doctor Who range with Big Finish. She can be found on Twitter at Georgia Cook and on her website at georgiacookwriter.com. The Other Stories is a production of the Story Studio Hawk and Cleaver and is brought to you with a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. That means don't change it, don't sell it, but by all means share the hell out of it. Until next time.